The Time Life magazine 2011 Person of the Year was a protester. Protests throughout Europe and the Middle East were followed by mass protests in Wisconsin, and then the Occupy movement throughout the country. In the U.S., we supposedly enjoy a democracy. The officials we vote for make the policies and laws, and we're supposed to have protection of police and the courts. When we have such a system in place, where change should be as easy as casting a ballot, and as worse, taking a case to court. Why do so many people feel compelled to protest?
They won the case in the Supreme Court. That's historical fact. And they gave them the right to march in Skokie. Through various negotiations involving the ACLU, the city fathers of Skokie, and the city government in Chicago, Mayor Daley, somehow they negotiated an agreement to allow the Nazis to rally again in Chicago parks. They had been banned from Chicago parks. And they gave them that in return for not marching in Skokie. That's the story.
You say, well, we believe in freedom of speech. These guys are, the United States has a concept, we believe in freedom of speech. So you might ask Lucia, do you believe freedom of speech or not? Is this guy, you have a debate about should they have freedom of speech. But some people don't get asked if they believe in freedom of speech for Nazis. And those are the people who got lynched, got burned alive, tied to some tree down there in the south somewhere, or all the people that fought in World War II. You don't get to ask them, what do you think about freedom of speech for Nazis?
Illinois Nazis. I hate Illinois Nazis.
And if you were to go into Marquette Park area, you would see a big sign, Ingers go home. No Ingers in Marquette Park. And there'll be a big swastika. That flag was hanging out front, and there'll be a police car standing there to watch over them, make sure they didn't get hurt. So it was kind of bold for anybody to try to take these Nazis on.
They had posters around on light poles, utility poles around the neighborhood that says stop the, and they used the N-word. They had a slogan, and they had a building. The headquarters was in a two-story building. Among all the other buildings around it were one-story, so one side of the building was like a big poster they had. One side, I think, the building said, let Frank Collins, Alderman, and the other side was another stop the N-word.
A certain summer where there were black bus drivers were on their route on Western Avenue going south towards Marquette Park would get beaten up. I mean, Nazis would come on in and drag them on and beat them up. There were shoppers also that were also beaten up.
There was one incident in nearby Englewood where a black man went out on his porch to pick up his morning paper, and there was a bomb inside, blew his hand off.
There's a street called Western Avenue, and no black person or progressive white person with a black person could walk across Western. You get beat up by the Nazis and their friends. In 1966, Martin Luther, you know Martin Luther King, right?
Yeah.
When he tried to go to Marquette Park, and he had about 400 or 500 people. He would have police protecting him. But he believed in nonviolence, you know, and he didn't believe in fighting back. So they threw firecrackers and rocks and bricks, and they forced him to retreat.
Well, this is a terrible thing. I've been in many demonstrations all across the South, but I can say that I have never seen, even in Mississippi and Alabama, mobs as hostile and as hate-filled as I've seen here in Chicago.
Nothing. No Nazis were ever arrested all that time here in Chicago in the 70s when all this was happening.
After the struggle of the civil rights movements, the courts and police still were powerless to stop the Nazis. Collin himself said he was able to hold rallies and demonstrations because there wasn't any violent counter-protest. What choice does that leave activists and Market Park residents who are trying to run the Nazis out? When the people of Market Park became tired of waiting on the laws and courts, they took it in their own hands, organizing to make a statement as strong as the Nazis.
So we thought about how could we deal with these Nazis. So the first plan we had was we would have a demonstration right in front of their headquarters. So it was kind of bold for anybody to try to take these Nazis on. So first we had the demonstration, then we decided we would have a demonstration inside their headquarters. Can you imagine that? Going inside of a Nazi headquarters and having a demonstration? Well, of course the Nazis didn't like that. And so we piled inside that room and we beat the crap out of them and they tried to beat the crap out of us. And one of our friends got shot. Her name was Susanna Finley, a Latino sister. Well, that was not enough. We had to make a final point. We had to have more than just a handful of people going there and beating up the Nazis in front, and they beat us up a little bit, and going into the headquarters. Now we had to make sure they understood we were coming. We were going to have our May Day march in Marquette Park. That was going to be in May Day, 1979.
The Nazis held a conference or convention in their headquarters. And what we did was organize an attack on the headquarters. And we broke in to the headquarters during their conference, during their convention, and cleared the place out. And that's when Susanna was captured and ended up in the hospital. She was captured and beaten. Ended up in the hospital. The police handcuffed her to the bed and arrested her in the intensive care ward.
You know, and why we should all be fighting, you know, against racism. You know, it's not an adventurous thing to, you know, fun-loving thing to do, but it's for our families and their families and every other family here, you know, that's been under attack for all these years.
We organized the big May Day March, Midwest May Day March in Marquette Park. And that by that time they couldn't even turn out enough people to give us any kind of opposition. Despite the heavy police presence, you know, there were just a handful of people out there. and they also could not even bring enough witnesses to court so that the charges eventually were dropped against Susanna.
In May Day, 1979. So we lined up all in the park. It was over there, and I was in the truck. I was a speaker. I was noted for having a lot of fancy things to say, like death, death, death to the Nazis, power, power, power to the workers, racist Nazis, you can't hide, we charge you with genocide, or Hitler rolled, Hitler fell, racist Nazis go to hell, and stuff like that. And I would also preach a little bit up on the truck. But now on the truck, we had rocks, bottles. One of our friends had a little pistol stuck in his belt just in case they would try to shoot at us. And the smart thing we did, we had some of our white comrades in the crowd inside of the park. And they had iron pipes wrapped up in newspapers, just in case the Nazi and their friends would try to attack. And so here we go.
Attica means Attica means Attica means Attica means Nazis mean Nazis mean Nazis mean.
And despite its reputation of being an integrated neighborhood, they were the most hate crimes of any neighborhood in the city in 1998. Those are just statistics kept by Chicago Commission on Human Relations. It's an arm of there's an agency in the mayor's office.
The suspects used a noose to call the victim the N-word and threatened him with a knife.
This is nothing but murder, and they shoot to kill.
Police shot and killed a 15-year-old autistic boy at his home in the south suburbs.
The protester, the person of the year. Has the system failed the people yet again? The allies that gathered for Obama are now occupying parks and buildings across the country. The racism many thought was over with the election of a black president is, unfortunately, alive and well. Will history's march take people to the streets again in their fight for justice?